Hello everyone, welcome to the Aseem Chhabra Show. My name is Aseem Chhabra. I'm a freelance journalist and a board member of the South Asian Journalists Association. Today we have a wonderful guest, Dr. Abraham Verghese, a doctor and a writer, author of 3 books. Dr. Verghese has written 2 sort of autobiographical non-fiction books, My Own Country and A Tennis Partner, and now he has his first book of fiction, Cutting for Stone. Dr. Verghese grew up in Ethiopia. You were born in Ethiopia to Indian parents, and you went to medical school there. And then I believe because of the time of the coup against Haile Selassie, you had to flee the country even though you were born there. What memories you have of that time? And you sort of bring some of that into this book.
Yeah, I certainly do. And first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I left at a very turbulent time. The emperor was being overthrown. A very dangerous and unstable military coalition had taken place. Lots of curfew, and so I was really pleased to get out of there. And I actually got out of there and came here to America, to New Jersey, as a matter of fact. And I worked in a succession of nursing homes as an orderly. And I look back, and that was the most important medical education I ever had. I really got to see what happens to the patient in the 23 hours and 55 minutes that the doctors are not there, you know. And I honestly thought that that was going to be my life. I thought I would never finish medical school because I would have had to go back and do a basic degree. You know how it is here. You do a basic degree and then you go to medicine, and I didn't have one. And then at some point, I remember a moment of working in Raritan Valley Hospital, New Jersey, and spotting a textbook of medicine on the table left by a medical student. And it was a book that I had a long relationship with, so just seeing that just fired up my ambition to, I have to finish medicine. So I, with the help of an aunt, got back to India and spent a year, you know, going from office to office. But finally, the Indian government took me in as a displaced person, and I went to Madras Medical College and finished there.
And then after that, you came back to the U.S.
After that, I came back to the U.S. to do my internship and residency, Tennessee, and then Boston.
And in between, you also did something really amazing, which very few doctors do. You actually went and did a master's at the Iowa Writers' Workshop, which is one of the most prestigious writing schools.
Yeah, I actually did that a little later. So I did my residency for 3 years. I did my fellowship in Boston. Went back and practiced for about 5 years in a new medical school in Tennessee. And at the tail end of that, I was getting really burnt out from the kind of intense care for HIV that I was doing. Conscious that I would come back, I was looking for some sort of a break, and I'd been writing quite a bit by then, mostly for myself, for medical publications. And it just seemed to me the lesson of AIDS was, whatever your dreams are, don't postpone them, you know, do it. And so I thought I'd apply to Iowa, and if they took me, I would go. And they did, and I went.
And what's really amazing is your 2 non-fiction books, really beautiful, moving stories, personal essays, really. It's full of memories. I mean, as a doctor, the experiences you had in Johnson City with the first book, and the second book is set in El Paso, Texas, where you were also when you wrote the book. And you were so comfortable writing the nonfiction, and now you moved to fiction. So how did that transition happen? And, you know, which sort of, where do you feel more comfortable now?
Actually, it was sort of the other way around. I was very comfortable writing fiction. I loved the idea of fiction. When I went to Iowa, that's all you did was fiction. They didn't have a non-fiction program. So my intention was that that's what I would do. And for various reasons, when I had some short stories published, one in the New Yorker, there was some interest in the fact that here I was a physician who had worked with HIV, who was still working with HIV, and you know, an interest in a memoir from me. Not a memoir, but really sort of a tale of that very curious period when HIV first arrived and when it spread to the hinterlands. And I had to learn how to write nonfiction. So I knew how to write fiction, I thought, but I had to learn how to write nonfiction. I had to learn how you're confined by the material. You can dramatize, you can rearrange, you can, you know, select anecdotes, but you cannot invent. And I systematically went and read some of the best nonfiction writers. I read Naipaul, who was a wonderful nonfiction writer. I read George Orwell. I read people like that, and I just sort of had a sense of what the standard was. But it was, you know, painfully learned and painfully crafted. I'm glad that you as the reader didn't see all the blood and the wasted pieces of paper.
They were very touching, both the books were very, I mean, I read them quite a while ago, 10 plus years ago. I think the second one came out
98, sorry.
98, yes. So that's also 10 plus years now, really very moving books. Cutting for Stone, I'm going to read, there have been two, you know, I have quotes. Entertainment Weekly gave the book an A grade, which is really remarkable. And for a publication which does mostly like very sort of mainstream pop culture entertainment is remarkable, and it says that Verghese can write about the repair of a twisted bowl with the precision and poetry usually reserved for love scenes. The doctor in him sees the luminous beauty of the physician's calling. The artist recognizes that there remains wounds no surgeon can mend. That is really...
Well, that's nicely written too.
That's really very nicely written.
I'll take it.
And the New York Times said that this is the first novel that reveals the author's willingness to show the souls as well as the bodies of his character. Would you like to read us a little?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Book? Yes.
I need to set this up by saying the book begins with this image of a nun giving birth to twins, and there's been no warning that she is pregnant. Her name is Sister Mary Joseph Praise. She's a very beautiful nun from South India. And all of a sudden, in this mission hospital in Africa, she's going into labor, and no one is ready for it. And the labor is catastrophic, and they're doing an emergency cesarean section. The father is presumed to be the English surgeon who was there, Thomas Stone. But he does not know how he could be the father. He doesn't deny it. He feels viscerally he must be the father, but he can't fathom how it could have happened. And so one of the mysteries of the book is that. So I had to mention all that for you to get this reading. So, and there are two twins who are born, and one of them becomes the narrator of this story. The other one is being resuscitated, has not yet started breathing in this piece I'm reading. The breathing twin gazed out from the copper vessel. Its puffy, newborn eyes surveyed the room, trying to make sense of its surroundings. There stood the man everyone took to be the father, a tall, sinewy white man looking lost in his own theater. The father's hands were preternaturally pale from the talc that lingered on them after he'd stripped off his gloves. His fingers were clasped together in a posture shared by surgeons, priests, and penitents. His blue eyes were set deep in the orbits under a ledge of a brow which could make him look intense, but on this day made him look dull. From the shadows sprung the great axe blade of a nose that was sharp in keeping with his profession. His lips were thin and straight as if drawn with a ruler. Indeed, the face was all straight lines and sharp angles, coming to a point in a lancet-shaped chin, as if it had all been carved out of a single square of granite. His hair was parted on the right, a furrow that originated in boyhood, with every follicle tamed by the comb to know exactly which direction it was to tilt. The top was cut unevenly, as if, after saying, "a short back and sides," he'd risen from the chair when that was accomplished, despite the barber's protest. It was the kind of obstinate, determined face that, with a spyglass held to the eye and a ponytail, would not have been out of place on the deck of an English man-of-war, except, of course, for the tears rolling freely down the cheeks. And from that tear-stained face, a voice emerged. "What about Mary?" Stone said, startling everyone because it had been so silent for so long. The measured syllables had the quality of a slow fuse. "I'm sorry, Thomas, it is too late," said Hemlatha, who is the obstetrician. As she suctioned the infant's pharynx, then pushed air into the baby's lungs, her movements speedy and almost frantic. The irritation with Stone was gone from her voice, and pity had taken its place. She stole a glance at him over her shoulder. A wrenching noise emerged from Stone's mouth, the cry of an unsound mind. He'd been a passive observer and a worthless assistant ever since Hema's arrival. But now he leaped forward, he grabbed a scalpel from the tray, and he placed a hand on Sister Mary Joseph Praise's chest. Hemlatha thought of restraining him, and then decided it was not prudent to approach a man wielding a knife.
And then, of course, the kids are adopted by Hemlatha.
And Dr. Ghosh.
Dr. Ghosh,
yes.
right. And it's basically their story.
Right.